Imagine living in a country where the music you hear, the films you watch, the city you live in, and even a telephone call to someone abroad can attract the attention of the state. In North Korea, restrictions that might sound almost impossible to outsiders are part of a much larger system. And while some of the strangest stories about the country have been exaggerated over the years, the reality behind many of its restrictions is far more serious. Because these rules are not simply about telling people what they can and cannot do, they are about controlling information, controlling movement, and ultimately, controlling what people believe is possible beyond North Korea's borders. Subscribe to Uncovering North Korea, because today, we're looking beyond the sensational headlines to understand how restrictions inside one of the world's most secretive countries actually work. Perhaps the most important place to begin is with information. For decades, the North Korean government has attempted to prevent ordinary citizens from freely consuming foreign entertainment. South Korean television, films, and music are particularly sensitive because they can expose North Koreans to a society their government has spent generations portraying as hostile and inferior. And this is where something as ordinary as watching a television drama becomes politically significant. A foreign program can show modern apartments, supermarkets, fashion, technology, and lifestyles that contradict the image presented by state propaganda. That makes entertainment more than entertainment. It becomes evidence of another reality. The government has also attempted to control communication beyond its borders. Ordinary North Koreans do not have the same unrestricted access to international telephone networks that people in most countries take for granted. Making unauthorized international calls can carry severe consequences. This matters particularly near the Chinese border. Over the years, some North Koreans have reportedly used illegally obtained Chinese mobile phones to connect with networks across the frontier. For families separated by defection, these secret connections can provide a rare opportunity to speak with relatives living outside the country. But they also create something the government fears enormously: an uncontrolled flow of information. A person who can communicate privately with someone in China or South Korea can hear things the state cannot easily censor. They can learn about wages, food, politics. Even the simple fact that life elsewhere may look very different from the version described by North Korean propaganda. And there is another dimension to this system that is even more disturbing. North Korea has long been associated with the principle of punishing people not simply as individuals, but sometimes through their families. Accounts from former prisoners, defectors, and human rights investigations have described forms of collective punishment in which relatives of someone accused of serious political wrongdoing can also suffer consequences. The logic is chillingly effective. If your actions could endanger your parents or your children, opposing the government becomes an entirely different calculation. Fear no longer applies only to you. It extends to everyone you care about. But not every restriction inside North Korea concerns obvious political opposition. Even where people are allowed to live can reflect the country's rigid social hierarchy. Pyongyang is not simply another North Korean city. It is the political showcase of the country. Its enormous monuments, wide avenues, apartment towers, and carefully maintained public spaces create the image the government wants both citizens and foreign visitors to see. But living there is a privilege. Movement within North Korea is heavily restricted, and residence in Pyongyang requires state approval. The capital has historically been home to many people considered politically reliable or important to the system. That creates an enormous contrast. The city most commonly seen in photographs of North Korea is not necessarily representative of how most North Koreans live. And this is where the situation becomes particularly revealing. Some popular stories about North Korean rules should be treated cautiously. One famous claim says citizens are allowed to choose only from a government-approved list of hairstyles. Another says, "Nobody is permitted to copy Kim Jong-un's haircut." These stories have circulated internationally for years, but evidence for a nationwide law enforcing a precise list of legal hairstyles is far weaker than the headlines often suggest. That distinction matters. North Korea is restrictive enough without turning questionable stories into established facts. The documented controls are already extraordinary. Religion provides one of the clearest examples. North Korea officially presents itself as guaranteeing religious freedom, and there are recognized religious institutions in the country. But independent religious activity is heavily restricted, particularly when authorities believe it challenges loyalty to the state. Possessing or distributing religious material can therefore become extremely dangerous. Foreign visitors have discovered this as well. American tourist Jeffrey Fowle was detained in North Korea in 2014 after leaving a Bible at a location in the country. He spent months in detention before eventually being released. To an outsider, leaving behind a book might appear insignificant. Inside North Korea, authorities can interpret the same action as something entirely different, an attempt to spread an uncontrolled belief system. And that reveals the common thread running through many of these restrictions. Foreign films, unauthorized telephone calls, unapproved movement, independent religious material. They may appear unrelated, but each allows something to happen beyond the government's complete control. An idea can travel, a person can travel, information can travel, and authoritarian systems depend heavily on controlling all three. Even North Korea's technological landscape reflects this separation. The country does have mobile phones, computers, and domestic digital services. It is not technologically frozen in the 20th century, but access is carefully structured. Most ordinary citizens cannot simply connect to the global internet and browse whatever they choose. Instead, North Korea has developed a tightly controlled domestic digital environment in which approved information can circulate without providing unrestricted access to the outside world. And that may explain why seemingly small rules matter so much. A government does not need to physically isolate every citizen if it can isolate their information. It does not need to convince everyone that propaganda is true if alternative explanations are extremely difficult to discover. And it does not need to watch every conversation if people already believe that an unguarded conversation could have consequences. That is the larger reality hidden behind stories about North Korea's so-called crazy laws. The most important restrictions are not strange because they are bizarre. They are significant because they fit together. Control the media people consume. Control communication with foreigners. Control movement, control political loyalty, restrict competing ideas, and make the consequences of crossing those boundaries serious enough that most people will think twice before doing so. From outside North Korea, it is tempting to focus on unusual stories because they make the country appear almost incomprehensible. But North Korea becomes easier to understand when you stop looking at individual rules and start looking at the system they create. A system designed to reduce the number of things ordinary people can discover without government permission. And perhaps that is the most powerful form of isolation of all. A border can prevent people from leaving a country, but controlling information can prevent them from fully seeing what exists beyond it. If you want to uncover more stories hidden behind one of the world's most secretive regimes, make sure to subscribe to Uncovering North Korea.